Bernard Goldberg, who has a website, bernardgoldberg.com, has a take on this. What if Herman Cain were a liberal? Here's an excerpt. Yeah, the so-called mainstream media uncovered Gary Hart's sex scandal when he was running for president in '88. He was a liberal Democrat. And they went after Anthony Weiner, another liberal Democrat who eventually resigned from Congress. John Edwards was something else. Reporters didn't want any part of that sex story, and they covered it only when they couldn't ignore it anymore. How about Bill Clinton? Yeah, reporters covered Monica and the blue dress and all that. So we certainly can't say they ignored his sexcapades. But it's more complicated than that. But let's go back to Herman Cain. His accuser is being described in the press as an Ivy League graduate. They never explain the relevance of that, so let me tell you. It's to let you know that she's smart, just like the reporters covering the story, and that people who go to Ivy League schools should be taken seriously, unlike Paula Jones. Paula Jones, as you recall, was the Arkansas state employee who said Bill Clinton summoned her to a hotel room and exposed himself in front of her. Given what we know about Clinton, the story is hardly incredible, but the day she came forward with her story, NBC and CBS ignored what she had to say. ABC News devoted a measly 16 seconds to it. Charlie Gibson of ABC asked a colleague on the air, why does anyone care what this woman has to say? And I think it's an interesting point. They point out how achieved these women are, and that one of them is an Ivy Leaguer. That is supposed to certify believability, credibility, and intelligence. And I would say I think the media did their best to ignore the Clinton story. And they did their best when the Clinton team finally decided how they were going to handle it, going after the women. The media was very compliant. When they went after Ken Starr, the media was very compliant. The media did everything it could to advance the Clinton version of the story. And if it weren't for that blue dress, I'll guarantee you there'd be an entirely different take on the Clinton story today if that blue dress had not been kept and found and DNA tested. So Herman Cain, the crazy notion here, the truth might be its own best defense. Media can't handle it. Here's another way to analyze this. Herman Cain may not be a skilled liar, but you know what else I've noticed? He doesn't retreat at the first sign of trouble. He doesn't cave. He doesn't whimper. He doesn't disappear. He doesn't hide. And I really mean this when I say shame on the Republicans that piled on Herman Cain when nobody knew the facts. Nobody to this day knows the facts. But shame on those Republicans for treating Herman Cain in the media and elected politics. I'm all Republicans, all conservatives. If you are one of those who treated Herman Cain as though he was guilty just because of his unpracticed response to vague suggestions of illegal or immoral or unethical behavior, if you caved just to look good to the mainstream media, if you piled on Herman Cain just so the rest of the mainstream media wouldn't associate you with the ragtag conservatism you don't like, then shame on you. Because here's a promise that you can take to the bank. Every one of you Republicans, other nominees in the media, elected politics, you can take to the bank that your guy is going to be next. If they take out Herman Cain, whoever's up next is going to become the next target. And if you continue to accept without question whatever the mainstream media says about any of our candidates, just to look good to them, just to curry favor with them, or just to appear as though you're not as silly conservative as, say, Limbaugh and the talk show guys are, you're eventually going to be next. Or the guy you support is going to be next. And for you to be consistent, you're going to have to throw him overboard as well. When that happens, when it's your guy that's the subject of innuendo and anonymous details, you're going to wish that you had Herman Cain and his backers to fight back alongside you. You're going to need all hands on deck, because what this is with Cain is nothing compared to what's coming. What we're in the middle of here is a test to see just how frightened Republicans can be made to be at the first sign of trouble. And way too high a percentage of establishment Republicans failed the test. And I know what some of you will say. Look, we're conservatives. Family values. All that. We can't be seen defending a guy about who it is said might have sexually harassed a woman. Wait until you know that he did before you throw him under the bus. 99% of establishment Republicans failed this test. Now, there's a plus side. The plus side is the American people still support and like Herman Cain. It doesn't mean he's going to get their votes, but he has their support in this instance. I guess there are a large number of people on our side, folks, who are never going to understand or never going to accept that we are in a war with collectivists and other assorted parasites who want to destroy the U.S. economy as currently built. And if you show any kind of weakness, they come back at you in greater numbers. See Oakland if you have any questions. There was more patience for the O.J. Simpson verdict than there has been for Herman Cain. You want to talk about a rush to judgment? Politico, which consists of mainly left-wing stenographers from the Washington Post who started their own website so as to protect the Post name, stenographers for the Obama regime, they run around, they attack a man everybody says is a good and decent guy who has flaws like all the rest of us. Republican blogs, some of them, ruling class chatter, abandon Herman Cain quicker than a carton of milk past its expiration date. Just like they did Newt. What did Newt do? Newt went out, bought his wife an expensive but affordable necklace, and he's accused of being incapable of managing money. This was the guy most responsible for delivering budget surpluses and balanced budgets not that many years ago. As I look at this week, it hasn't been all that good for Republican unity or courage. There's going to be a nominee. One of these Republicans is going to be the nominee, and whoever it is head and shoulders above Barack Obama and anybody else the Democrats could throw up in replacement if they decide to do that. And we might want to keep that in mind, since the election is a year away and the primaries are right around the corner, and all this sloppy partisan gotcha reporting should have gotten 99% derision from establishment Republicans. That didn't happen. But there will be other opportunities for our side to show a little fortitude. I understand the fear. I understand the reluctance. Oh, gosh, what if it's true? I really protect myself here. I've got to make sure that I don't say the wrong thing here. So if this is really true, they can't come back and say I defended the guy. So what's the safest thing to do? Condemn him. Yep, safest thing. He's not going to be a nominee anyway. So I'll condemn him. And I'll show in a reverse racism way that I'm really not a racist like the left says. I'll show I'm not just supporting a guy because he's black. I'll really show him how smart I am. I'll show him how well-rounded I am. I'll show him how open-minded I am. I'll show the left, and I don't care what you want to show the left. When that's your motivation for remaining credible, you lose it all with me.